What is happening? Welcome to my channel. My name is Matt Bradford. Today we're building on improvisation, intro to improvisation. We're going to get a little more specific, okay? I talked about kind of the general ideas of how I think about improvising, about building energy in improvisation 1. I think it's the most important one, but obviously it's mostly theoretical, and so we want to kind of get into some nitty-gritty nuts and bolts, like how do I do some stuff that starts to make sense. Before I get started, check it out. I build my lap steels. I build lap steels for sale. This one is for sale. I also build conversion necks for Telecasters, for example. So if you have a Telecaster or a Strat or something sitting around, I can do neck pockets for both. Then we have bolt-on necks for Tellies or Strats or Jazz Masters or whatever. Also, this is also for sale. I also do full T-style instruments. The link for that is below in my Reverb store. Or if you want to, I mean, seriously, hit me up for like a way better price. Because we don't need to do fees and things like that. I can get you a way better price if you just email me, mattbradfordmusic@gmail.com. I also have shirts. We got the cat guy. We got the bones guy. They come on hats. They come on mugs. Right? That link below. All of today's lesson materials are going to be on Patreon. That link is below. And finally, if you like what you're getting out of this, you don't want to subscribe to anything, you don't want a guitar, you don't want a shirt, you just want to leave me a tip, boom. QR codes, leave me a tip. It would be greatly appreciated. We're trying to be able to make this sustainable. Okay, so improvisation 2. Let's start with a progression. Now again, on Patreon, one of the things we did, I took a poll. I said, do you want to start with major or minor? The poll was pretty quick, but ended up being 67% people want to start with minor. So I'm going to start in the key of A minor. Okay, this is the shape that we're going to use around the 1 chord. Okay, the 1 chord is at the 7th fret. A minor. We're in open D tuning, right? But we're tuned to A minor, or we're playing in A minor. Also, real quick, I'm going through my Tungsten Mosaic. It's a 5-watt Tweed Champ style guitar amp, and I'm going through a Caslitter Sweet Little Thing, which is basically an 808 style overdrive. And these are Mr. Glynn's pickups. I'm going to be primarily on the neck pickup, which is a Playmaker. Okay, so key of A minor. Here's the track, and this track is also part of the Patreon download stuff. But check it out. So 1 chord. I'll put the chart up here. Okay, and it goes through a bunch of times. Now, one of the great things about the backing tracks, this one, all of them, is, one of the big questions was, how do I build a solo? And the answer is that we want to move the energy. We want to move it up and down. We want to go to all these different places. And so having a track that is a limited amount of time as opposed to something that's just looping over and over again, we can't just keep playing gibberish. We've got to actually create a solo. One of the things we're going to do with that is we're going to use this scale to create a solo. We have these chord changes. Okay, let's see. Chord changes here, scale here. We're going to use these scale notes, right? And you can see the chord changes underneath them. I have put the numbers in the chords. So we're going from a 1. And again, if you don't remember if you don't know how the numbers work, my beginning lessons, I explain all of it. But check it out. On the scale, a 1 chord is a 1. Here's the shape, right? Okay, the flat 7 chord is the next set of frets down below it. Now Now here's just your, because I'm just staying around the 1 chord, so I'm using this chart. But let's go to the other chart real quick. This is just your minor pentatonic scale. This is obviously in the key of D, which we're not in today. So but the relationship between a 1 and a 2 is always the same. So from 1 to 2, no matter where we are, it's always 2 frets up. 1, 2 frets up is 2. Okay, so if I look at my chart here, which is my minor numbers, even if you don't know how the numbers work for each chord, you can figure them out really easily. Check it out. Here's my shape, my minor shape on my 1 chord. It's a 1, 3, and a 5. You can see it's flat 3, but like you can see the numbers in this chart, right? And then the next chord down is the flat 7. See where it starts on the flat 7? Right there, okay? And the numbers in my flat 7 are flat 7, 2, and 4. And if you go to the next chord down, the one that starts on the flat 6, well, look, it's a flat 6, a 1, and a 3. This is how, in a flat 3, obviously, right? So this is how I find my chord shape. So let's go back to the 1 chord let's go back to the pentatonic around the 1 chord, because the other question we got a lot was, I have a hard time memorizing all the numbers. And if I'm looking at that big scale, I can't memorize anything. But if I break it down into bite-sized chunks, something that I've talked about in, I think, every lesson I've ever done, bite-sized chunks. So I'm going to just take this area around the 1 chord and I'm going to learn it. And then I can learn the area around my 4 chord, and I can learn the area around my 5. I came out of nowhere. I can learn the area around my 4 chord, and I can learn the area around my 5 chord. The area around my 1 chord starts in the key of A minor, starts at 7, right? And if you look at this chart, I gotta look and see if I have it going up to the flat 3 or the 4. But either way, it's going at least up to the flat 3. If I learn the shape around my 4 chord, it's going down to the flat 3. And if I learn the shape around the 5 chord, it's going up to the flat 7, which, look where the flat 7 is, right there. If you learn the shape around 1, 4, and 5, you have the entire fingerboard. So let's start around the 1 chord. Okay, now, first exercise is going to be this. You have this, you've got this on this side. You've got this, you've got it figured out. I want you to print it out or save it or put it on the screen or something, because it's taking up too much space, and I need that space for this chart. Okay. This is how I think a lot of times with uneven lines. But also, check it out. That top row is my 1, my flat 3, and my 5. Those are the notes of the 1. The next chord that we're going to is obviously the flat 7. The notes in the flat 7 are flat 7, 2, and 4. If you look at this chart, you can see that let's start with the 1, because that just makes the most sense, right? My 1 of my 1 chord, it's right there. It can go either down to the 7 or up to the 2. My 3 of my 1 chord can either go down to the 2 or up to the 4. And obviously, if I didn't say flat 3, I'm going to say 3 from now on. We're going to know it's flat 3 because that's what we're talking about. Okay? Even though I do think of it as the flat 3. We'll see. We'll see what happens. And the 5 can go down to the 4 or up to the flat 7. Now, even that is probably too much to start with, but does that make sense how this chart is working? Basically, there's always a note. There's the closest note of the next chord to the note I'm playing in the chord. So, let's start simple. Let me give you the advanced version real quick. Let me show you what I'm doing. So, I try to keep this through line. If I start on the flat 3, I'm going to start on the flat 3. And I'm gonna work my way down. You see what I'm saying? Like I'm gonna see if I can do that against the chord changes. Flat 3, 2, 1, flat 7. This is the super advanced version. Okay, we're gonna start way simpler than this, but I want to show you what I'm doing. I added a bunch of garbage in there. But the through line, flat 3 against the 1 chord, a 2 against the 7 chord, a 1 against the 1 chord, and then a flat 7 against the 7 chord. I mean, a 1 against the flat 6 chord, and then a flat 7 against the 7 chord. So, okay, so the first exercise, instead of starting with all the fancy stuff, right? I just want to do 1 note per chord. And I want to stay in this shape, because if I'm doing 1 note per chord, I could easily do it, you know, just move down the chord shapes. I can do that, and that's fine. I'm just I'll explain that later. It doesn't matter. The point is, we're trying to learn the numbers in this area, in the area around the 1 chord. That's the whole point. So let's start on the flat 3. It's right here in the middle of this chart. Okay, and you can see the flat 3. I can go down, I can go up, I can do whatever I want to do. Pick 1 number for each chord, but try to be close. So if I go from my flat 3 to my 4, if you look at the chart, the 4 can go one of 2 places. It can either go back to the flat 3, right, or up to the 6, the flat 6. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. If it doesn't, obviously leave a question in the comments. Also, again, the guys on Patreon, you know, a lot of times if there's something with they're just like stuck, you know, they drop me a message. I usually fire up a little like iPhone video in my robe at like 6 in the morning and show them what I'm doing. So here we go. Check it out. 1 note per chord. That's that flat 3 down to the 2. Now watch. I'll go back up to the flat 3. Right, see? And then I'll go from there to the 4. Okay? Next time through, let's go to the 5. See? Because the 4 to the 5, right? It's that flat 6. That flat 7. Stay on the 5 again. The 4, down to the flat 3, down to the 2, the 1, up to the 2, up to the flat 3, up to the 4, and that last jump felt a little weird because I went from the 4 to the 1 instead of to the flat 3, which would have made more sense with just what we were doing. But does that make sense? Start small. Start small. It's as simple as that, because what we're trying to do is learn the numbers and make sure that we're cementing that I'm playing the chord tone against the chord. When I'm improvising, right, when I did the fancy thing, I'm doing that. And then I'm just adding mainly pentatonic licks in between each number. So when you look at this chart, right, and you should probably turn that off so it just, whatever, it doesn't matter. Technology, man, technology kills me. So when you're looking at this chart, the pentatonic scale is in maroon, it's in red, and then the other notes of the minor scale are in blue. So a lot of times, if I'm at this like this flat 3 and I'm going down to the 2, I might do right. Let me try to simplify some licks. I have, you know, my motor memory does whatever it wants. Right. No, see. Right, there's that 2. I'm just adding that 4/5 from the pentatonic scale. Oh no, that's sorry, it's outside of the box. There we go. This is the box we want to be in. Right. I'm just grabbing notes from the pentatonic scale. Now, so that brings me to the next exercise. Do the same thing you were doing before, but now, let me just make sure we're good. Do the same thing you were doing before, right? We're picking one note per chord, but now I want you to go to the note up in the scale before you go. If you're going down, go up. So if I'm going down from the 3 to the 2, I'm gonna hit the 4 first. Right? 3, 4, 2, 3, 1, 2, 7. Does that make sense? I'm going up one scale tone before going down to my next note. Conversely, if I'm gonna go up, I want to go one scale tone above where I'm gonna play, and then go down to it. Does that make sense? So if I'm going down, I'm going one scale tone up from the highest note in whatever I'm doing. So from the flat 3, if I'm going down to the 2, I'm going to play the 4. But the flat 3, if I'm going up to the 4, I'm going to play the 5 first. I'm going to go 2 frets up above my target note. Okay? Does that make sense? Let's try that. So same thing. Start on the flat 3. Oh, that was nice. Okay, down to the 1, and then up to the 2. See how I went to the flat 3 and then the 2? Okay. Now to the 4, so now I'm gonna go to the 6, the flat 6. Yeah, and then back to the 4. I went up and then down. Mess it up and go back to the flat 3 at the end. Okay, so what I'm doing, hi buddy, the scaredy cat's here. What I'm doing is slowly adding ways to get my notes to make sense. I want this through line no matter what. So I'm learning my notes really on these middle 3 strings for the most, I think, totally. I don't think I've gone above. So I've started with just these middle 3 strings, right? I've started with my 1, flat 3, 5, right? 7, 2, 4, and 6. No, that's 2. I know the notes. 2, 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7. Right? And then my 1's up here, but I don't think that's in the chart, or if it is, cool, but the 1's there. I'm going to learn everything this way. Did you see that? That was impressive. I'm going to learn everything this way, across here. And then if I get stuck in a rut, which is something that was, again, it was a normal question. What happens if I get stuck in a rut? Well, start starting on a different spot. Start finding a different exercise. Go watch one of my other videos on, I mean, there's so many, there's practical pentatonics, and there's lateral movement, and there's, I don't know. I mean, if you just go look at the lessons, like, but like, I assume you might be able to get something out of it. You know, there's a whole bunch in my parents' basement, or in their garage, right, when I was moving from my old studio to this studio. Super cool. So that's where I'm starting. Right? Now, to get a little more advanced is, let's do 3 notes per chord. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move between 2 notes of the chord. So if I'm looking at my chords again, we have the 1 and the 3. Well, what's the note in between the 1 and the 3? It's the 2, right? 1, 2, 3. I know we're playing lap steel, so we're not known for our counting, but you know what I'm saying. Right, if I'm going from my 4 to if I'm on my 7 chord and I'm going to from my 4 to my 2, there's only one. It's 4, 3, 2. If I'm going from my 4 to my 7, which is an interesting one, right? I have 2 notes. I have the 5 and I have the flat 6. If it were me, I would opt for the pentatonic option. Usually. There would be exceptions, but really sounds better to me than... They both sound cool. I don't know. I like them both. But does that make sense? I'm gonna pick a scale tone in between each of my chord tones, but I'm still gonna start on a chord tone, right? Whatever it's gonna be for each chord. So it's a 1 to a flat 3, then a 2, 1, 2, or 1, 7. Does that make sense? I'm just doing different ways of like creating these melodies, and they end up being really cool. What's going to happen is I can start to then add, when I start adding other scale tones, I have these pathways mapped in my brain. Okay? And because that map lives there, I always have like a tight-knit melodic through line to what I'm doing. And I've gotten trapped in that before, so I wanna make sure that I do other things to get out of that and play. Right, I wanna make sure I get those bigger intervals in there, but I can't do that without having each set of was that even the right key? I don't know. I want to make sure that I create as many different ways to burn these pathways into my head as possible, so that when I sit down to play live, whether I'm with people or whether I'm by myself, oh man, it's a struggle today. That it's all automatic, right? The thing that I get in trouble with the most is if I start thinking, and I need it to just be purely instinct. I need it to be instinct. So the more I have these pathways built in my head, the more I build in the instincts. And I can feel it when I'm showing you that when I go from the 2 to the 1 here, I always want to go down to my, or my 3-2 here. I always want to go down to my 1 here. And it's like, go here. Right? And get into this area. The last thing is this. Let me just close with this conclusion, right? Because I know I add some fast stuff in there, and the fast stuff is cool, but it's the least important part, and it's the hardest part to develop because it just takes time, right? But you can build these cool pathways in a lot, and you can get them dialed in, and you can get that one note sounding really good. Make sure it sounds good, right? Don't press down too hard. Don't be like plucking too hard. I'm plucking gentle, right? Everything's muted. Except for the note I'm playing, make sure all of that stuff is right. When all of that stuff is right, it's going to sound good. And then you can slowly start to add those, right, the speed stuff. But the speed stuff is literally putting on a metronome or a drum beat and just practicing, right? And then you got to do all the different versions of that. And that is great if you're sitting in front of the TV and you have a metronome and you feel like getting divorced. Then that'll be cool. So that would be the thing I would focus on the least would be speed, and what I would focus on the most is simple phrases and learning the numbers. And I would start around the 1 chord because, and we've seen this before with a bunch of the solos we've done. If I have this note here, well, check it out. I go from here to here with just that shape. Okay, I can obviously, it's harder to get a cool, easy transition, but that doesn't mean this shape is super valuable and you can do everything you need to do around the 1 chord. And then we'll learn it around the 4 and around the 5 and all that stuff. And I'm going to do some major stuff next, but this method applies to everything. You find your numbers, you start burning those pathways into your head. I hope that makes sense. Thanks for hanging.